And ladies and gentlemen, live from the Two Schmoes Show studio, it's Two Schmoes Late Night Live, starring Kyrol as himself, the infamous Orion as himself. Okay, when I thought that intro up, I was going for more late night with like Conan type deals.
Hmm.
I think I went a little too SNL.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fucked that up. That's my bad. I'm the infamous Orion and I'm a Schmo.
I'm Cairo, and I'm a Schmo. It's been
I've been
so long since I've seen any late night comedy show like that.
I've been kind of getting into it, and it's like my own damn fault because like I watched that Hot Ones that interview with Conan everybody was going off about,
Hmm.
and I discovered Conan O'Brien's really fucking funny.
Yeah, dude's good.
Yeah, dude is fucking quality. So I realized, yeah, I kind of want to check out his shit, and lo and behold, his shit don't quit.
Hmm.
So I started like watching a lot and like kind of getting into the world of late night TV. And you know what? It kind of makes me hate James Corden even more. There's like some funny motherfuckers on there, and he is just not one of them. How you doing, Kyril?
Man, it's been mixed bag these last couple of weeks. It's been really busy,
Yeah.
but generally positive, right? It's kind of week where it's like little things that really suck happen, but they're small and they don't really matter. But it feels like they are as bad as the good things that have been going on, you know?
I kind of get what you're at, but yeah.
Yeah. So, like, objectively, it's been pretty good. But I don't know. The vibes have not been quite where I would want them to be. How are
I
things going in your neck of the woods?
I'm dying from all this humidity. Like it's
It's
been
so bad.
this day
I hate it.
sucks because it's nothing but rain over at your side, right?
It stopped for the time being, but yeah, on and off.
Yeah, it's on and off rain, and all it's done is just make miserable,
No.
miserable weather.
Yep, pretty much.
I will go into my shower and I'll still get like less humidity taking a shower than it is currently at the moment.
It feels like it. Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of time chewing on my air right now. Anyway, uh welcome to the Two Schmo Show, ladies and gentlemen.
Hmm.
This is the part where we do a wacky in, informative monologue to start off the show.
Woohoo.
Has anybody been watching the newspapers lately?
Newspaper?
Newspapers, you know what I mean. I'm trying real hard to do like a Conan impression. I suck. I watched this one episode. It's on YouTube. You can watch this for yourself. He
Yeah.
uh he took an audience of all children and did a late night TV episode just making fun of kids. It was great.
Hmm.
Anyway,
It,
so what's on the agenda for today, Kyrol?
man, it's a full list. We
Really?
missed last week, but I'm surprised at how many tabs I have open right now. Okay. Right. I guess part of it is that we are in peak Supreme Court season, I guess you could call it. Last
Tragically.
couple of weeks, Supreme Court has been in session receiving oral arguments. And while many of these cases have not had their rulings passed down yet, um, it makes for some entertainment still. The big one, of course, that is very much still looming is the presidential immunity question that has been posed to the Supreme Court. Oral arguments are currently ongoing, have not concluded yet. Best way that I put it, or heard it put this last week, was that there are currently five justices that seem to completely disagree with the idea that a president should enjoy absolute immunity for any action taken during or like after their presidency, basically.
Mm.
Um, and that's terrifying because that means that there are somehow four judges that don't think that, or at least haven't made it nearly as explicit if they do. So, like right now, there's at least two that, you know, seem like they're on the immunity side, and that's a terrifying prospect.
Hey, give it up for Clarence. He's still kind of regretting not taking the RV.
Yeah, I would be. But yeah,
I
Clarence
mean,
and Roberts are, you know, Clarence and Roberting it up.
imagine being given the opportunity to get a free RV and you just decide, nah, my duty's with the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Uh, Another pretty, I don't know, what do we call it? Horrifying Supreme Court case that's being heard right now. That I would hope that we'll hear some good news on soon because anything otherwise would be uh, horrifying. Is the City of Grants Pass v. Johnson case, asking the question of does the enforcement of generally applicable laws regulating camping on public property constitute cruel and unusual punishment prohibited by the Eighth Amendment?
What the fuck?
This is basically trying a law that is attempting to blanketly criminalize homelessness.
Yeah, that's
And
scary.
it's pretty easy to see how bad that is as a concept. Where if you criminalize homelessness, you're creating an endlessly perpetuating cycle of people being in jail, being arrested, or not being able to find jobs and therefore not being able to be housed because of their prior criminal history. And it gets really, really scummy once you start to get into the details of it. So, piece from Reddit here that I was reading this week on it that I'm just going to be quoting verbatim here. I haven't
Yeah.
fact checked all of this, but from what I've been able to find, it seems, you know, embellished maybe, but factually accurate. The organization arguing for the criminalization of homelessness is Gospel Rescue Mission. They are the only option for homeless adults in that town that has brought the case to the Supreme Court. And this is from a linked article about them. Quote, once an individual is accepted, they must comply with all the house rules or sacred covenant, which hammer home the conditional nature of the charity on offer. In exchange for a bunk for 30 days, individuals are required to work without pay for 6 days a week, 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. Jobs include working for various mission business ventures and cleaning streets downtown, for which the mission, but not the resident, is compensated. During this 30-day period, residents are not permitted to look for outside work, which all but forecloses the hope of acquiring secure housing. For Dolores Nevin, who once went to the mission with a torn rotator cuff and was turned away because she couldn't work, disabilities that prevent you from, quote, participating in daily mission life, end quote, effectively bar you from staying there. Residents must also attend a traditional chapel twice a day and go to a Christian church that follows the Nicene and Apostles' Creed at least once a week. Unitarian services, for example, don't qualify. Additionally, smokers are barred unless they agree to quit cold turkey and switch to nicotine patches. Brian Boteller, resident director at the mission, told me this gives residents skin in the game, a way to make sure people are serious about leaving homelessness behind. Among other petty rules, there is no socializing between members of the opposite sex, except at approved mission events. For residents, all intimate relationships other than legal biblical marriage, regardless of gender, either on or off mission property, are strictly forbidden.
So these motherfuckers are just doing slavery with a Christian tune.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In effect, I saw somebody do the quick math on it, and they're basically extorting the homeless in these, workhouses for the equivalent of something like $40,000 per year of labor that not only do they not have to compensate the residents for, but that they then receive the benefits of that labor themselves. Just going off of, hours worked per week, minimum wage, not having to provide things like, traditional benefits because these people are probably not classified as employees.
Yeah, because 6 hours a day, 6 days a
So yeah,
week, that's 36
it's
hours. So, holy
yeah,
fuck.
that's a work week.
That's a work
That's a
week.
full work week. And the thing is, though, they're not just having their time committed for that. They are required to attend church services twice every day. They are required to spend some amount of their time on Sundays going to further religious events. These are not optional for them, or they are made homeless again. And thanks to this law that they're trying to defend in the Supreme Court, that then makes them at risk of being arrested for having their homelessness criminalized.
So, okay, here's the fucked up part, right?
Mm-hmm.
When in this cycle that they're starting, does a person get out of homelessness or prison and not end up directly back into homelessness slash prison?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
That's a great question.
Yeah. In particular, what was that line? Um, During this 30-day period, residents are not permitted to look for outside work. So what do you do at the end of the 30-day period?
You have to
If you want
reapply.
to look for something else to do with your life, you either have to reapply and you can continue to not be able to look for outside work, or because you've just spent the last 30 days of your life doing hard labor for no compensation, it's not like you can go and qualify for rent somewhere to start applying for jobs. There's no other homeless shelters in this town. So where do you go? Well, you end up homeless and then in jail.
So it's slavery or state sponsored
Yeah.
slavery.
It's sadistically designed, I believe, with that being the intention to
When
perpetuate people in these cycles of either homelessness, criminality, or poverty, or all of the above, in order to effectively keep their free labor
yeah. No,
under the
I
guise of Christian love.
listen, man. The best part about Jesus is he licenses image to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot believe that. That is the first time I've ever heard of this sick cult. And I don't like it. Why is homelessness, do you think, looked upon as a moral failing?
A good question.
Because quite frankly, like I want to blame the '80s, like the Reagan time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's while Reagan is, of course, probably partially to blame for it. Uh, I think there's also an important historical element that needs to be equally understood as to the founding of America, right?
Yeah,
Where the predominantly Protestant Christian religions of Europe who were fleeing the persecution that they were experiencing in Europe proceeded to then establish themselves in America predominantly, and then in turn persecute those who found themselves in their company themselves. We see this in the mere existence of things like solitary confinement as a punishment can be traced back to those Protestant governments where solitary confinement meant isolation from your fellow man in the presence of only a Bible. And the philosophical idea was that if you put somebody in a dank, dark hole and give them the good book of God, they would find God and become a better person as a result. And we, of course, know that that is based in on nothing at all.
Yeah.
It's fiction that these people told themselves. And I would argue that today, the same lack of support from people's governments in the form of education support, in ways of, general assistance to keep people living both, in a literal sense, alive and as well being happy in their lives in the same way that those contribute to homelessness, it also perpetuates people's misbeliefs that their circumstances are born out of anything other than luck. And that they are somehow better, even though those circumstances exist entirely outside of their controls, just as they did for the people who they look down on that are homeless.
I like that. I like that assessment.
You know, and then obviously, drugs and drug abuse. Good old big pharma
All
doing their dirty
drugs,
work.
all drugs are a moral failing, young man. How do you not realize that? All drugs are a moral failing. Famous words. Even caffeine is a moral failing.
I, I will say,
Yo,
it has been a very enjoyable experience now that we're starting to see how many psychedelics are not only not generally harmful to their users, but that also have legitimate medical benefits that have gone unexplored due to their being so aggressively uh, criminalized
hmm
and just avoided as a class because of that criminality. Uh, it's good to see work starting to happen to challenge those long-standing narratives. And it's a damn shame that it's taken, more than 40 years now to get to this point. But there is bright spots that we're starting to see that challenge those wrong assumptions that our legal systems have been based on for so long. Things like, the obvious stuff, LSD, MDMA, even when you think of psychedelics, it's a short list. And most of them, in controlled circumstances, are being found to not either not be as dangerous as the stigma.
did I just lose you? Oh shit. We lost him, ladies and gentlemen. He is gone.
Are we back?
I think we're back.
Oh, but
That
yeah,
was weird. Okay.
TLDR, drugs good, and the science supports it.
And with that, I'm going to light up a bong. I don't have a bong. I've got a plastic bottle. I actually don't like being high. I'm just.
Speaking of,
Yo,
uh, welcome to the club, Germany.
what the fuck did you just say? Okay, what's that on? What is the rate of that?
Germany legalized marijuana
Oh shit! Welcome to the
for
club, Germany.
18 and ups. So good job, Germany. It's about time.
Good job. It must have been real embarrassing to watch all their citizens go to Amsterdam for like a weekend and come right back.
Right? It's wild. Like, think of how much money they're losing.
Dude, okay, this is a call out to all the governors who are listening to our show. Why are you dropping all that taxation dollars?
Hmm.
Why are you wasting all those taxation dollars on criminalizing marijuana?
They got to keep that moral panic running.
Moral panic, gotta target the minorities. They gotta create an us versus them narrative some way.
Hmm. That's
I
right.
think I like to call this, right, the criminalization of marijuana as a governing skill issue.
Yeah, I don't know. It all ties back in, right?
Yeah.
The same people who preach the idea that, well, if you put the homeless people in these church camps, they'll turn into good people, as if they're somehow not good people already. Same people that are on that side of the drug debate. Slightly on topic,
Hmm.
kind of. YouTube channel Boy Boy. Highly recommend him. Recently put out a video talking about a current trend in social media with a focus on a particular YouTuber who they were reviewing some of their videos of, where there's apparently this trend of just lying about the current homeless situations in order to perpetuate these kinds of stereotypes and ideas. Things like how Seattle is like a lawless hellscape full of drug abusers and crime and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The kinds of people who are still hung up on like the Chaz stuff from 4 years ago. And it's remarkable to see how far some people are willing to go to just outright lie about what they are filming and showing you, like showing you to your face how willing they are to outright lie about it in order to support the narrative that they're trying to spin.
Dude, it's like it's the greatest era of journalism, but the worst era of quality journalism.
Yeah.
Just on the grounds of everybody's a manipulative prick with an
Yeah.
agenda. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind it as much if they were good at it, but they're so awful. And I don't know if it's that there are that many people who are just willing to ignore reality to be able to listen to somebody who holds the same awful opinions that they already do, or if there's just that many people that are just that ill informed that they aren't able to see the lie being told to their face. But it's pathetic. Where
I'm
they like
convinced.
they
Sorry.
inter they go up to this homeless woman and they're just interviewing her. And she tells them about how, yeah, she's been homeless for however many years. She's got 3 kids who, are in the same situation that she is. And she works 3 jobs, but because of the circumstances surrounding her homelessness, she's never able to find or stay in any stable housing, even though she's working 3 like actual jobs, all part time, of course, but she's doing work, and she's just not able to in any way get out of her circumstances. And they spin that as somehow being the fault of the homeless person. Like, what are you fucking doing? You monsters.
You mean you don't have a whole day to dedicate to your fucking resume so you can get a good full time job?
I mean, it's not even that. Like, hot take maybe. I
Yeah,
think if someone's working 3 part-time jobs, they should be making enough money to be able to afford some sort of housing.
I agree. Can't believe it, Kyle. Coming in with the hot takes, and all of a
No.
sudden everybody agrees with you.
I'll say it's probably not going to be the last one for this show.
Dear God. We're on a fucking roll today, ladies and gentlemen.
It'll be a good one.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much more to talk about on that part, though. So let's go ahead and go on to the next.
Oh no.
So I'm going to try and like set this up in a way that makes sense in some sort of like a piece to piece flow here. So
Okay.
let's talk about the current situation in Ukraine because uh, while the U.S. just passed a supplemental bill to provide aid to a number of circumstances, including approximately $61 billion in military support for Ukraine. The situation in Ukraine is bad right now. And I think it's important to talk about it. The last kind of year and a half has had a lot of the reporting surrounding the situation in Ukraine be optimistic, bordering on positive surrounding it. And that has continued even as the situation on the ground in Ukraine has started to turn away from that. Just this last week, major Russian offenses in the regions where they are has pushed some breakthroughs in the Ukrainian lines. And while conventional military tactics would not necessarily allow those breakthroughs to persist, the Russian tactics aren't exactly conventional, and they have no problem sending, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of their own men into a meat grinder in order to maintain those breakthrough positions. No cost is too high as long as it's not in, anything more than human lives.
I mean, human lives is a very broad term for the meat grinder.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, proletariat, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Yeah.
Proletariat lives that are good enough for the meat grinder, not the oligarchs, just
Yeah.
proletariat. The meat grinder hungers for the proletariats.
Yeah, there's not a ton more to say about that. Other, just I don't have the specifics off the top of my head currently. They're out there and they matter, but it feels like important context to have given how it took so long for this recent aid package to end up being voted through. Um, it's disconcerting, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that it was voted with something like 100 Republicans still voting against it is more disconcerting. Ukraine has been, requesting more aid even than this for quite some time now. And while it's good that the United States has finally done something, um, a lot more needs to happen. And that includes nations that are not the United States. There's a lot of European nations that have also started to become a bit lax amidst the overly rosy predictions and reporting surrounding the situation in Ukraine. So there's much left to do.
Why tell a bad story about what's going on in Ukraine when you can just, tell about how Israel is, having a bad time,
Mm-hmm.
We've only got time for one war at a time in the news. Ukraine had their chance, Now it's Israel's turn because, and there's one thing we need to know. It's about how Israel's the victim.
Yes. And speaking of, that same bill that included $61 billion for Ukrainian arms for Ukraine, amongst other material support, also included 9.5 billion in humanitarian assistance for civilians in not only Gaza and Ukraine, but Sudan and other population zones caught in conflicts around the globe, and $14.1 billion in funding to support Israel.
So Israel gets 14.5. I'll just run that down. 14 billion for
14, yeah.
themselves. Everybody else gets to share 9 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
adorable.
Comes in the midst of mass protests that have been ongoing for many weeks now at universities across the United States. I believe the total number is currently nearing 100 campuses. Last I heard was over 75. And I believe the vast majority of those are still actively protesting in a variety of ways. And, we just need to talk about it. It's a very important thing that's happening right now. And it's very much worth mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing that these protests are demonstrating for is greater transparency in the endowments that their universities hold. That is the literal coffers that the universities draw their funding from. Greater transparency to show what those coffers actually contain, what businesses they're invested in. And then from that, if the universities are invested in companies that are profiting from the slaughter that is happening in Gaza, or that are directly tied to the Israeli government or state, to divest themselves of those investments. And would you know it, the response from the universities, and in particular, the police called to those universities, has been exactly as one would expect. Flashpoints in particular happened at various universities along the East Coast, with notable stories coming out this week at what I believe was Columbia, what was the other one? USC and UT Austin. Um, Working our way down, Columbia University was one of the earlier ones and comes amidst a number of Ivy League schools that have been embroiled not only in a variety of protests from the student bodies, but also questions of anti Semitism that were raised with regard to what was happening on their campuses. And at the Columbia University, more than 100 students were arrested for trespassing, with many of those now being suspended and potentially facing criminal charges.
Ooh.
At the, I believe it's University of Southern California, they're also having many on-campus protests. Yes, University of Southern California. In part, they are attributing to the canceling of its main stage graduation ceremony for its students, saying
What?
they could no longer host the May 10th event where some 65 students and their guests would be expected, citing new safety measures that would have to be required. It is worth noting that Asna Tabsum, a Muslim student, South Asian descent, who was chosen by the school as its valedictorian, had been barred from delivering the event's valedictorian speech. The school also citing safety concerns for that action. And finally, but that we're going to be talking about in specifics here, I believe, UT Austin, very similar story. Protests, sit-ins, encampments, arrested about 100 students, almost all of whom who have now been released without charges being filed. Police assaulted and arrested a news reporter who was holding a camera doing their job. And of particular irony, let me see if this is still posted. I would not be surprised if they've taken it down already. No, they haven't. The University of Texas at Austin still has a page on their website saying UT celebrates free speech. Free Speech Week at UT showcases the university's commitment to freedom of speech, civil discourse, and the importance of engaging in constructive debate. And on top of that, the University of Texas at Austin, they've now unlisted it because they're fucking cowards,
Good.
has a video on their YouTube page titled, "Why Can Members of the Public Come to Campus at Any Time and Engage in Demonstrations and Speeches?" You could not ask for your student body to protest on their own campus any more than that. And they go and call the same cops who, Texas cops that failed so many times in protecting these student bodies, both collegiate and under and lower, to come and round up these same children and have them arrested. Go Texas. I have had I have a friend who lives down in that region of the United States who's offered me a position at the location that they work because they desperately need help
Okay.
working on their projects, and it is exactly for this kind of shit that I will never live anywhere near Texas as long as they continue to have the rampant corruption and just vile leadership that they continue to allow to be in their state. It's never going to happen. And it's a shame because there are so many people in that state that are proud of their state and are trying to make it better. But the people that they live amongst just seem to, they would never do it publicly, but their actions and the people that they vote for just seem to communicate such absolute disdain for them and their opinions.
I always like to think of Texas as like the perfect scenario of how an oligarchy works because you,
Hmm.
I know several people in Texas just because how I where I work and like we have offices in Texas, so I know a lot of Texas people. Everybody I've met from Texas is in the Austin or Houston area. And as far as I'm concerned, those are the only normal people in Texas. I've spoken with clients there, and they have like this weird, unhinged way of not accepting reality. That they have like their own internal logic in Texas when you're outside the Austin and Houston area. And if I imagine it's because they get that privilege of having so much money that they can live isolated from everybody, like, and all that empty space inside Texas,
Hmm.
that
Yep.
actual like social ramifications of things going on doesn't affect them because they're so far from the ripples, it just dissipates by that point. So yeah, no, I agree. Fuck Texas. It's the I can't believe I'm about to say this. It's the poor man's Ohio.
Kinda.
Yeah, Texas has empty space just to have empty space. Ohio has empty space for fucking corn.
I was gonna say, I think you might have a better argument calling Ohio the poor man's Texas because, you know, it's Ohio, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I, I,
depends on
I
the day of the week. It could go either way.
I'm trying to insult Texas. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I know Ohio's kind of considered a shit tier state, but I don't know any Ohio legislators by name, which is probably a good sign.
I suppose so.
I need to check. Controversial lawmakers. Oh, okay.
In the same vein,
Yo,
we also had a very welcome statement from Bernie Sanders uh, after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described the protests on American universities as anti Semitic. Uh, Response from Senator Bernie Sanders: No, Mr. Netanyahu, it is not anti Semitic nor pro Hamas to point out that in a little over 6 months, your extremist government has killed 34,000 Palestinians and wounded more than 77,000, 70% of whom are women and children. It is not anti Semitic to point out that your bombing has completely destroyed more than 221,000 housing units in Gaza, leaving more than 1 million people homeless, almost half the population. Anti Semitism is a vile and disgusting form of bigotry that has done unspeakable harm to many millions of people. But please do not insult the intelligence of the American people by attempting to distract us from the immoral and illegal war policies of your extremist and racist government. Do not use anti Semitism to deflect attention from the criminal indictment you are facing in the Israeli courts.
I fucking love Bernie.
So, took him a little longer than I would have liked to get there, but I'm glad he finally got there as publicly as this is.
Why does okay? Why does I'm going to play to the narrative here a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So please forgive me if I come off as a little stupid, but Netanyahu dealing with, all this very bad stuff going on with him right now. Everybody's favorite whipping boy, Netanyahu,
Yep.
have a moment to really go off about random ass American students, you know?
Yep.
Because last time I checked, Zelensky didn't like had time to talk about those Russian protesters that were going on like when the Russian protests were happening over Ukraine. So how is this narrative different? Yet they're so similar, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. This is for as much history as been happening in the last, I'm just gonna say decade to be a little bit generous.
Yeah.
It feels like the important parts, or at least the most important, the history that we're seeing today feels like it makes the history that we saw a few years ago feel much less important, if that makes sense.
Isn't it fucked up how like after COVID we immediately went to like 50 wars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it very much is.
Like I know the economies around the world are kind of like in a little bit of a shitty mood right now, and nothing jumpstarts a good old economy more than a military industrial complex. But I mean, come on, come on. Ugh. Anyway,
We got a brief update from the Michigan Attorney General's office on their
ooh,
ongoing investigation into the 2020 false electors plot.
oh no, okay,
Some interesting stuff. Most notably, confirmation from Howard Schock, one of the agents working under Nessel, confirmed that Trump, Mark Meadows, and Rudy Giuliani are unindicted co-conspirators who would be brought in as witnesses who are known to have interacted with those who have been charged but have not yet been indicted at this point. Important to note because it doesn't mean that they could never be indicted. There were some big names that were, of course, absent in the initial list of indictments when the Attorney General's office announced their investigations.
mm-hmm.
Um, and it very much, keeps that door open, which is good. It was a pretty glaring omission at the time. We also had an announcement from Arizona Attorney General announcing indictments for 11 fake electors as part of the criminal activity that occurred in their state. And last, but before we get into the, I don't know, national, I don't know what you call it, the sweep of regulatory and administration changes that we had this week in the Biden administration, a quick moment just to make sure that there's no question about it to say fuck Christy Nome. What a
Is that
horrible individual, the South Dakota governor,
yeah?
who admitted
Fuck.
to have killing her family puppy after being infuriated by its being untrainable, going on to claim that it only shows how politically incorrect she is. I'm sorry. Killing an animal does not make you political anything. It only makes you a psychopath, you disgusting individual.
I fucking love that little peek into her psyche that she gives right there by describing it as the punishment of death for
Mm-hmm.
being untrainable.
Yeah. It's extremely fucked up.
That is a person who needs to go to fucking like mental rehabilitation right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's like classic child who is clearly in the process of having some sort of like psychological problems burgeoning. That's like, harming the family pet is literally the 101.
Yeah. You need to step back, lady. Check your fucking self. It was a puppy too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Deeply fucked up.
Can you believe? Okay, so of course there was that really fucked up tweet. Um, have you seen like the governors and like all the other politicians kind of dunking on her?
I have, yes.
Yeah, because I posted one in chat before we started.
Yep.
But Whitmer took a picture with all of her dogs. So isn't that late? Isn't the dog killer calling her what she is? Isn't she also like considered to be a potential candidate for Trump's VP?
Probably. It
Gross.
would make sense.
Yeah. Trump would be like, "Yo, she killed a dog. I'm all over that shit."
Hmm. All right. Let's get into various. I don't even know how to describe it. Bunch of shit happened in the Biden administration this week. So let's talk about it.
Oh, Joe
Big
Biden's
news
very busy week.
in Joe Biden's America.
Joe Biden's America. Sleepy Joe
Uh,
woke up.
Congress passed a
Yep.
bill that could ban TikTok.
I have
Um,
no hard feelings.
I think, I don't know. I wouldn't go so far as to say that this is good, but I would certainly toe that line. And I will say, from the perspective of being a government, it makes complete sense to do this.
Yeah.
Uh, Key pieces of information to understand on this is that while the law that was passed does mention ByteDance, the Chinese owner of TikTok, by name, it does not enact its enforcement by means of banning that Chinese company from participating in the United States market. It is much more broad. And I think it's going to be a lot more interesting to see the ripple effects from that as much as anything else. Where, actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to pull up the actual law. That'll be a bit too dense. The gist of it is that this law that was passed by Congress bans the operation of an application in the United States by any company that is at least 20% owned by China or a Chinese company. The same for Russia, Iran, and North Korea. This is, of course, targeted very specifically at TikTok at the moment, but being as broad as it is, it's going to catch a lot of other companies up in it.
I was about to say, when's Truth Social getting in that?
Yeah.
Ah.
So the law does not go into effect right away. Currently, I believe it's slated to go into effect end of January 2025.
Mm-hmm.
In the time from now until then, any of the impacted companies have the option, we call it an option, but they either have to stop operations in the United States at the end of January 2025 or sell at least 81% of their company to a foreign entity or make spin up a subsidiary that operates independent from the whole that is entirely in the United States. There's been a lot of debate on this, partly because I think the people voting for it in Congress, I would not be surprised if a substantial number of them don't understand what is happening here. We've seen this come up pretty disappointingly frequently. Basically, whenever there's a tech issue being debated on Congress's floor, we saw it with Facebook when Zuckerberg was brought up. We've seen it with Amazon. We even saw it when the debate was happening surrounding TikTok, and they had the CEO of TikTok brought in to speak before Congress and give testimony. Uh, there's a lot of really dumb people in office, in particular when it comes to technology.
Yeah.
And the idea of privacy or cybersecurity is something that has been brought up multiple times in conjunction with this. And while there may be some merit to that, this bill does not mitigate those risks, as there are plenty of American companies that have no qualms about collecting and selling the data that they have on their users, American or otherwise, to pretty much anyone. What I would call the real reason that this bill has come into existence is from the disproportionate amount of political pressure an app like TikTok offers the Chinese government to be able to apply to the American public. Where if, say, a bill is being proposed in the US Senate that disproportionately impacts Chinese businesses, you could very well start to see all of a sudden a bunch of astroturf type activity that supports or doesn't support or has strong opinions one way or the other on that legislation. And that's the kind of activity that personally I understand the government's intention to desire to crack down on. We saw how egregious the activity on social medias was during the 2016 and 2020 elections. And while this doesn't close that door completely, this is at least one way to try and clamp down on it. Um, yeah, this is probably not the best way to do that, but from that perspective, I can understand why this exists.
I feel a lot of this is like a very rushed way to crack down on that exact scenario you were going on about.
Mm-hmm.
Because as someone who was studying media back in 2016, I agree with you. It was weird seeing these agendas fly up a lot, especially with again the Russian perspective on there. Because like there was like the whole fake news boom that was going on around,
Mm-hmm.
and to offer TikTok is beautifully set up to give you a lot of information really fast because, 10-second video, 10-second video, 10-second video. You can binge content really fast, and then whether you retain it or not, good question. But you can definitely get spammed with a lot of messages in this incredibly fast time. So if you have these disinformation campaigns, I totally see it why, especially an authoritarian government like the U.S., wouldn't like having that as a factor in their elections.
Mm-hmm.
It's no surprise to me that it got passed so fucking fast. Well, not fast, but bipartisan. I
Yeah.
definitely, I definitely think they could have done a better job with the legislation around it, but I don't know. I would love to see who drafted these exact ideas for the bill because it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely not someone tech savvy.
I'm curious. I can actually look that up real quick.
Do it.
Uh, that is not the right one. See, the problem with it is that it keeps getting called a TikTok bill. And that's just not what it is.
No, it's a defense bill.
So I was looking at it on my phone. So I'll do this to the HR 7521. HR 7521. Drafted by uh, lead sponsors listed as Representative Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin.
My
Co-sponsored by 54 members of Congress. Yeah, quite a lot.
they're bombing his Google Knowledge Panel as a former United States representative. That Mike Gallagher.
Interesting, really?
That's what Google says. Former fucking representative, but you go on Wikipedia, no, he's still there.
Yeah, no, he's very much still there.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's 8th district from 2017 to it's not even that like it was recent. It's been since 2017. Weird.
Yeah, I don't. Are they really just anticipating him not to make it back in because he co-wrote this TikTok bill?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, he's apparently a Catholic. Believe it or not. Thank you.
Currently on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, seems like. Maybe not. Maybe that's not accurate. I don't know. It's all a fucking mystery sometimes, it seems like, anyways.
Holy shit, this man's fast. Gallagher won the title of fastest man in Congress in the ACLI Capital Challenge, a 5K race for individuals working in all branches of government in the media, every year since first taking part in 2017, most recently finishing with a time of 1957 in 2023. This man outpaces me by 10 minutes. Fuck him.
He's zooming.
He is a zoomy zoomer. God, okay, now I gotta beat his time.
All right. Some other things to bring up in the talking about the whole TikTok thing. ByteDance has said that they will not be selling the social media service. They plan to challenge the law up to the Supreme Court should need be. And as just sort of interesting piece, the BBC yesterday posted an article talking about the ghost of TikTok in India, as India banned the social media app in 2020 without almost any warning. It was announced, and within a week it was gone. And the app has continued to remain banned in India since. The article looks at mainly the perspective of what happened in the wake of it, looking at where content creators went, what the actual impact was, and largely, as you'd expect, people just moved to other social media platforms. The users and creators on those platforms largely think that the newer systems are not as effective as what they were experiencing on TikTok, but it kind of goes without saying.
You know, I imagine it'd probably be something comparable to like what happened with Vine.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Vine, for all the children in our audience, was your grandparents' TikTok?
I would like to see a more in-depth look at. I mean, I guess I'm sure you can't really because it's all proprietary and stuff, but like, what empirically, how do these social medias vary uh, in terms of their usability and their reach, right? Because the thing that I keep seeing repeated again and again is that TikTok is good for niche content in a way that other social medias aren't. And every time I see it, it is from the perspective of either quotes from users or as anecdotes that are being recounted. And I find that very sort of chicken and eggy, right? Where it's like, well, is it good for niche users, or do niche people come to this because they haven't been able to find the traction that they wanted in other places? It's like, which way does it go? I don't know.
I think it's niche users. Because I'm of the opinion that everything that happens in social media is just a reaction to the user base.
Hmm?
But that is a good question.
Let's get into the good stuff now
There's,
because
there's good.
there's a lot of good.
Oh yes, the good shit that happened from the Biden
Yeah,
administration. Yeah,
there's actually a lot of really good stuff that happened this week.
I like to call
To
this.
start with,
Sorry.
Tesla had to recall all of the Cybertrucks that they've sold due to a problem with the accelerator pedal, where the pedal detaches from the actual accelerator arm and can become stuck down.
I don't get it. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, what's the problem? Did you see the comic? I don't know if I sent it to you. I did. The comic of the person who goes
Classic.
through their window.
Yes.
Yeah, very much enjoyed that. But yeah, Cybertrucks are having problems, and it's been very funny to see people shit on them. Particularly as we're starting to see that they seem like they have some sorts of problems handling water or something. And at the same time, we have Elon going on Twitter and spouting off about how, like, oh, it'll be able to cross through at least 5 feet deep for 100 feet of water or some shit with a software update. Meanwhile, people are having their
What?
cars bricked by car washes and heavy rain.
Man went out of his way to say an update can help that.
Yeah,
That's not an update. That's not a software thing, Elon.
he's confident,
He
and them having to recall nearly 4,000 of their vehicles shows how confident they are.
Oh my god. I cannot wait for like a few years from now when everybody who worked on this project is on to different things and their
Hmm.
NDAs expire and we can start hearing like the good production stories about this nightmare.
It'll be fascinating. It's kind of I would be surprised if it happens quite to that degree because of how much Tesla and all of Elon's companies have cultivated their yes man culture for so
Mm.
many years.
He's like Charles Manson, but for like guys who hang out on Reddit too long.
Hmm. Also, an interesting insight as to how many Cybertrucks they've been able to ship, because they had to give the exact number in the recall 3,878,
Damn.
which is not that many. There's some interesting pieces, not quite like leaks or anything like that, but just, like shareholder talk about how Cybertruck numbers are failing to meet expectations, and that because of that, they're going to be starting to shift their attention more to their like traditional EV lineup that are still selling much better.
I mean, at least they can go through a car wash.
I love this. This is great legal speak. The Federal Safety Agency said all 3,878 Cybertrucks on U.S. roads produced from November 13th to April 4th have the defect, which it said was caused by soap being used as lubricant during assembly at Tesla's factory in Austin, Texas. The residual soap, quote, reduced the retention of the pad to the pedal.
Fucking
In other
what?
words, caused it to fall the fuck off.
Soap?
Yeah. It's not that surprising, honestly. The like because it's a rubber pad that gets slid over a piece of metal, so you want something to help it go on easier, but you're not going to put like a single screw in there to make sure it doesn't fall off. What
That's
the
what
fuck are
I'm
you doing?
thinking.
Yeah.
Who 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 cannot afford to just put a whittle bolt in there?
Yeah. Yeah, I have seen discussion on this, and I largely agree that it's a great example of the mentality that goes into Tesla's vehicles as a whole for their engineering, where they're so focused on the aesthetics and their technology that they completely neglect the actual practicality of it being a vehicle that you use and hope to use for some amount of time.
I think Teslas are
And
ugly.
the Cybertruck is just the pinnacle of that entire design mentality.
I think every Tesla vehicle, to some degree, is a little bit ugly. You ever? Okay, this might be something I'm just spouting off because I'm in fucking Grand Rapids. Every
Hmm.
time I go out, I see a Tesla on the road, right?
Yep.
And I think to myself, how much better it would look if it had any detail in its front.
Hmm.
Because they look fucking bald.
Man, that's just a problem with. I mean, the Teslas are more pronounced for sure, but it's a problem with modern cars in general,
Okay,
where
you're right.
this like aerodynamics race to the bottom has just completely destroyed any semblance of good car design, and it is a shame.
Like, what happened to a good old fashioned grill?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you don't need as big of a radiator anymore to cool these tiny engines that they now use. So you need less grill to cool that radiator, and you can put giant pieces of plastic or aluminum in front of it instead in order to improve aerodynamics. So they do.
Okay, but
And it looks hideous.
how's that going to help me in a crash? Because I will take a buffer grill over aerodynamics any day.
I mean, the buffer spots are still there.
Okay.
It's just the grill has been, cut to half its size, and in the place where it was, the buffer zones are still there. It's still plenty safe. It
Yeah.
just looks like shit.
I mean, it does look like shit. I'm saying this as a guy who does not design cars for a living, but like, what
Yeah.
the fuck?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't get it.
I don't get it either. What is the
So
best looking car to you, Kyril?
best car, does it have to be one that currently exists?
No, I will let you go and pick any car specifically.
Here's my hot take.
Hot take, okay.
The best looking car ever produced, and I don't actually know if this was a real car or not. It's by a Russian company, the Marussia F1, I think it was.
Okay.
I don't even know if they actually made these or if it was just all fluff to pull in investor money, but I think these look great.
That is a badass car. That's like a Batman of cars.
Yeah.
Like,
And it's, it's a Russian car from the mid 2000s, so it probably never really existed at all. Or if it did, I'm sure it didn't function for shit. But yeah, I'm big on it. That
I,
was
I
like my poster car wall that or poster wall car that I had back when it was around.
did you have that in your locker in school? Be like, someday I'm going to be able to afford that.
No, but I had it as my computer desktop background.
That's so. I
Honorable mention for like car that I might ever have a chance to like really buy one day.
yeah.
Um, and it doesn't look great, but Lexus LFA, from a mechanic's perspective, is an absolutely batshit piece of machinery. Because it's like, it's a Lexus. It kind of looks like a Lexus had a baby with a Toyota Supra, but what a car. Highly recommend just looking up the engine noise from it because it is immediately distinct and probably one of the best sounding engines ever produced.
Hmm. Unfortunately, I'm not much of a car guy, so I have like no cars to compare these against that I would say is like the best looking car.
Yeah.
I like the thing that goes vroom vroom.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Car design very much peaked in the mid to late aughts,
Yeah,
where turbochargers were just kind of worse, so they weren't being used, and that was overcompensated by ridiculous mechanical engine setups that just resulted in like just absurd feats of engineering. So yeah, very
you know,
biased because they're like objectively they're not as good, they're not as fast, they're not as efficient, they don't even look as good sometimes, but there is something exceptionally evocative about them.
I agree. You know where I think we started going wrong with cars?
Mm.
Uh,
What's that?
as soon as we started putting fucking computers in the car dash, like the
I
middle
very much
console.
agree.
Fucking hate those things.
Yep.
Yeah, they're not practical. They raise the fucking prices, and all they do is just serve to make everybody's life a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
miserable, just to make your car feel more interesting than it actually is.
Yep. And usually they don't work.
They don't. They're like bare minimum. They have like one feature that's not working right.
Yep. That was one of the things that I was the most pleased with when I got my current car was that it doesn't have an infotainment system, even though it's relatively new. It just doesn't have it. And I think it's
Good.
probably like an I didn't pay enough kind of thing for it, but I don't care because it has Bluetooth and I use my phone. I don't need my car to replace my phone.
Give
It
me a
doesn't make me any safer on the road if I'm poking a touchscreen on my phone versus a touchscreen on my car dash. But I don't have the horrible user interface problems because it's just so simple.
the user interfaces on those suck ass. They
Yep.
are like empty space, just empty space with
Yep.
one little logo in the middle.
Yep. I think that one of the worst things, like the worst sort of punishments that you could prescribe to someone of our generation or younger is using a bad touchscreen.
Do you remember back when the iPad was getting big and there was like all
Hmm.
those really
Oh yeah.
shitty knockoff ones?
Oh yeah.
You learned real fast what was a good touchscreen and what was a shitty non-responsive one.
Yeah. For anyone who might have forgotten, highly recommend Dank Pod's video he has looking at a relatively new, uh, extremely budget Android iPad tablet, and it is horrible. Just one of the worst things.
The worst screen I've ever touched, right? It
Hmm.
was what is it? There's like two types of screens, the passive and responsive ones, correct?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, responsive is the good one, right? Where
Um, yeah, it's like the difference between whether it uses the conductive properties of your skin to determine where you're touching it, or whether it uses physical pressure.
okay,
And the ones that are capacitive, I think is what it is, that uses that detect the electrical conductivity of your skin. Those are the good ones.
yeah. So this must have been a receptive one. It was definitely the one you had to press down to use right.
Yep, like a
And
DS touchscreen.
the DS touchscreen, for all
Yeah.
its faults,
Yep.
still felt decent to touch.
Yeah. Well, and it knew its limitations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nintendo Nintendo knew what they were doing with that bugger.
Absolutely.
This company who made this tablet I touched, I've only touched it like 3 times, but I remember just feeling
Hmm.
gross. It was like made with inferior plastic,
Yeah.
thick plastic, and it was like warping the screen as I touched it. I do not like that feeling at all. And car infotainment systems are just
Hmm.
a notch over that feeling.
Yep. Back onto vitamin nutrition.
Hey, we might be
What?
actually bros after all. We just had like just went on a tangent about cars.
Yeah. Uh, the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, FCC, in a 3-2 vote this Thursday, has reinstituted net neutrality rules that were rescinded under the former President Donald Trump. Uh, it's been a while, so I'll forgive anybody who doesn't remember, but net neutrality was the idea that telecommunications providers could not artificially restrict data speeds to particular websites.
Hmm.
Basically, they didn't have to guarantee that every website would work equally well, but they couldn't be the ones artificially restricting them. So this is a huge thing. Uh, the like worst case scenarios, right, is that if you're say Verizon, you could throttle the shit out of anybody trying to go to Sprint's website, or vice
Hmm.
versa, or any of your competitors, and there was not really anything to prevent that. Um, Net neutrality is very much a good thing, and it is good to see it back, even though it's better late than never, right?
I'd rather we have it and never get it back, like because I was always afraid with, especially with AT&T out there.
Hmm.
AT&T owns Max, so what
Yes.
was stopping them from like throttling every other streaming service?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like
That's
I
the
feel like
risk.
we were very close to that every day.
Uh, Interesting piece here. Apparently, it was votes on party lines. Go figure. Democrats were unable to make the change earlier in the Biden administration as they did not have a majority control until the FCC board had a new member elected to it this previous October.
Good shit.
Hmm.
You love to see it. Remember when they were doing those promotional videos about why it was good to end net neutrality?
Oh yeah, it's
Those,
all so paper thin. I'm honestly, it's kind of fascinating that there was so much noise about when it was put in place, and I think it was like 2015, and then it just got put back in place with barely a whimper.
yeah, like no
Just
one.
happened.
It just happened. Where's the promotional videos this time? You know?
Yeah. Yep. I do think it's very interesting that I love. the arguments that try to get made about it, how it'll impose, what was this from the Chamber of Commerce, imposing a flawed pre-television era regulatory structure on broadband that will only deter the investment and innovation necessary to connect all Americans. Well, why doesn't Congress get off their ass and regulate minimums required by the telecommunications providers in order to meet those minimums that the American public requires? If it's necessary to connect all Americans, shouldn't we be regulating that as such?
No.
Uh, in other news, this one
Yes.
is more a recent problem that's been happening as every airline company that exists has gotten shittier and shittier. But the Department of Transportation has ruled that airlines will be required to automatically issue cash refunds to passengers when flights are canceled or feature significant delays. The new refund rule will also apply to significant wait times for checked bags and when extra flight purchases, such as Wi Fi, are not provided on board. Prior, airlines had been allowed to set their own standards for issuing refunds, which often required lengthy processes, forcing passengers to make refund requests by phone or by website.
I'm all for this.
The other part of it was that airlines would often deny you any sort of a refund if they could offer you a what they believed to be a comparable flight, and that is not allowed under this current ruling. It does not prevent flyers from accepting an alternative flight in guise of a refund for their delays, but it does not allow these extremely lengthy requests. If you want a cash refund, you can just get it. So
Yay.
good job, DOT.
It really scares me that we went so long without that being a provision already.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Next piece.
Yo.
Biden administration has finalized ruling to increase compensation thresholds for overtime eligibility. The ruling now ensures that salaried workers making less than $58,656 annually receive time and a half overtime for any overtime that they work. This
Good.
increases the salary threshold from 43,888 to the new cap of 58,000. And where's the other one? It takes effect January 1st, 2025. So very good.
Yeah.
Kind of a small thing, but people should be definitely compensated fairly. And in what is probably the biggest change from the Biden administration this week, the FTC voted Tuesday to ban nearly all non-compete employer employment agreements. These are basically, non-compete agreements. This is a big one. Best way that I heard it framed is that it makes no sense for someone who works at McDonald's to have a non-compete that prevents them from working at Burger King. There is no industrial, or I guess not industrial, industry knowledge that could be leveraged from that one position to the other that has a genuine interest in protecting the company from any sort of malfeasance on the part of the employee.
I'm all for it.
FTC Chair Lena Khan talked afterwards, commenting on comments that they heard from employers who, because of the non-competes that they had been forced into signing, were stuck in abusive workplaces. Noting one person who, when an employer merged with an organization whose religious principles conflicted with their own, a non-compete kept the worker in place, unable to freely switch to a job that did not conflict with their religious practices. The FTC ruling will be applicable retroactively, meaning that the vast majority, the FTC estimates 30 million people that are currently bound by non-competes will no longer be bound in those circumstances unless there is a genuine, basically like copyright or intellectual property type of circumstance that could cause a genuine harm to the company from that employee being allowed to work for one of that employer's competitors.
That would mean they would have to be like someone on the very tip top, though, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily. but it should crack down on a lot of the frivolous non-compete agreements that were being put in place to prevent employees from being able to pursue better job opportunities. But there is plenty of, particularly STEM type roles where you could be handling sensitive information that could theoretically cause harm to a competitor without being in like management, right?
Okay, that I better understand. I was thinking more of non-STEM professions.
Right. But yeah, and pretty much everywhere else, you know, just because you know how to use a grill doesn't mean that you have knowledge that you can't take to your competing fast food chain.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Quick update as we get into some more entertainment stuff here
Ooh,
on A24's Civil War. Talk about it in our last show. I haven't seen it yet, which is kind of surprising. I fully expected I would have seen it on one of these weekends, and I just don't care.
I don't care either.
I I want to. I want to support A24 because I appreciate their position in the film space as being kind of like one of the last production companies that sits in the kind of mid-budget space at this point. But this one in particular just doesn't resonate with me particularly well. And as we learned the last week, they used AI generated posters in their ads for Civil War.
Which makes no sense.
It doesn't. I mean, they look like shit.
I thought those weren't even official.
No, they are. It kind of looks like it. It looks like something that somebody would throw together as like a joke, but
Yeah,
no, they're official. It's just like, what are you doing? Why can't you afford to pay somebody to just take a picture from Chicago or just license a stock picture that somebody already took?
it's not that
What are you
hard.
doing? It's the easiest thing. So, yeah, very disappointing. Felt worth
I,
mentioning.
someone should have gotten fired. Oh,
No, they'd have to have done something wrong for that to happen.
have you heard what some graphic design companies are doing to kind of fight back against AI use?
No, I don't think. Maybe, but not by that.
So apparently they're doing a thing now where they're requiring the raw Photoshop documents on any project that is submitted over to them.
Huh.
So that means like a copy of every layer used in the image with every source image just to make sure it
Hmm.
is not AI generated.
Interesting. That's definitely one way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a lot of sense. It's unfortunate. Wizards of the Coast had a really frustrating circumstance, frustrating for them, where they, of course, have a massive stable of artists that they work very closely with when they make their trading cards. But they had partnered with a outside company to work on making an advertising campaign for one of their upcoming releases. And the people that they contracted with just went and used AI generated backgrounds without giving them the heads up or any permission or anything. And because this is happening between a third party company and WotC's like marketing teams, not their art teams, the people at Wizards of the Coast were completely blindsided by it. And yeah,
That's
it's super
really
unfortunate. It's fucked up.
that's really bad for Wizard of the Coast of all companies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In particular for them, because to all of the faults that they've had, they've taken a fairly strong anti-AI stance when it comes to their products, and they've given a very firm commitment that they will not use AI in their products, and they will not allow their artists to use AI in their products.
Just gross mishandling.
Mm-hmm. Yep. For theatrical releases this week, there's nothing in particular that I wanted to talk about other than making note of the fact that the original Alien is back in theaters, which is pretty fucking cool. New releases. Last week was The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, latest Guy Ritchie flick, has Henry Cavill as the lead. It's doing fine. Seems like a good action
Yeah.
movie. I would be interested in seeing it when I don't have to pay a theatrical ticket to go watch it.
Like a matinee price.
Yeah, that was the thing
Yeah.
that really triggered it for me was last Friday. This last Friday, I was looking at Celebration Cinema's showtimes for Civil War. I was like, yeah, what the hell? What? Let me see what's going on right now. I'm curious to see what it looks like. And I saw that Alien was showing as well at basically the exact same time. And I did the kind of like mental math where I was like, wow, I know Alien's a better movie and I've never seen this theatrically. I don't want to pay this price to see Alien on the screen. Why should I do it for Civil War? So I saw nothing.
That's good logic, though. Like, I
Yeah.
think a lot of these re-releases, while they're very cool and nostalgic and
Hmm.
fun and all that shit,
Yep.
some of them are kind of pushing their luck.
Yeah.
A lot of these, especially with Spider-Man ones going on right now,
Yeah.
why can't we pay for like a ticket to all three at once? I feel like that would sell better.
I'd agree. All right. Uh, you want to do Fallout real quick or Loki? Which way do you want to do
Uh,
this? I'm good either way.
I say we do Fallout because that's
Okay.
mainly a you thing, and
Yep.
then we'll go into Loki, which I feel like will be the larger discussion.
Yep. All right. Fallout TV show season one.
Yeah,
I've seen it, and it's pretty good.
pretty good.
Does a very good job of capturing the appropriate atmosphere of particularly New Vegas. Has a mostly on brand blend of, not seriousness, but I guess you could say grittiness
Mm.
with levity. I do think it leans a little bit too much into the levity for too long at times. Um, but on the whole, it's pretty good. I enjoyed my time with it a lot. It kind of confirms what I expected, seeing through a lot of the TV review ratings, where it seems like by virtue of being a TV show, you're automatically entitled to like a 10% bump in your ratings compared to a movie that would have been of the comparable quality. But it's well worth the time. And I think they did a good job of making it both engaging enough for Fallout fans by telling a new story while still being able to communicate the appropriate atmosphere of the Fallout series to newcomers to it.
Mm.
And in part, it's contributed to a kind of a renaissance for the Fallout games, where apparently Fallout 76, that was extremely maligned during its launch, and very fairly, because it was horrible at launch, apparently cracked 1 million players in a single day. Not simultaneously, but over a 24-hour period.
Just enough people to come in, realize, oh fuck, and then get out.
Apparently, it's quite good now. It's still a live service game with a cash shop and all that kind of stuff, but apparently Bethesda has spent the last couple of years doing like actually good work to put it into an enjoyable state as just being a sort of a fun game.
About
I'll say
time.
personally, it's gotten me to. I don't know if you've heard about this, but the Tale of Two Wastelands mod for Fallout 3 in New Vegas is basically a giant mod pack that just stitches the two games together.
That's badass.
So it takes like a day to install because it's so extensive. But I went through that and I've been, poking away at that every once in a while. And boy, is Fallout 3 old. I had forgotten how long ago Fallout 3 released. It's dated.
Let me check this real quick. 2008. That's about what I expected.
Yeah. It doesn't sound that long ago until you play it and it's like, oh yeah, this is what 3D graphics used to look like.
Oh, you mean those old like oatmeal like textures?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
Doesn't
god, you're right.
upscale well. Weird shadows, the lighting in particular is what I notice, where the lighting just looks very fake all the time. Because it is. It's very simple engines. But
We have
the
taken
game's
your
just it's
lighting for
still fun.
granted.
It's still a lot of fun.
Huh.
All right, let's
Yep.
talk Loki.
Low key, the best thing Marvel's done in a hot minute.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much in agreement. This is the best thing that Marvel's done since the Endgame pairing.
It's the best TV show they've done for Disney Plus, bar none.
Yep,
Yep.
bar none. Absolutely.
I don't understand how this show does everything right so well, and then like the
Hmm.
rest of the shit is just milk. You know,
Yep.
bland coats everywhere. Yeah, I'd say it. I remember when this show was first coming out, and I was thinking to myself a little bit, why do we need a Loki show? Especially since Infinity War kind of finished him, it finished his arc.
Hmm.
I'm glad we got this.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, it is a testament to how the MCU can do things right when they have an idea and they pursue it to its logical lengths. You know
Hmm. Yep. Do you know something that I think will make you mad? Because it made me mad.
what?
Rotten Tomatoes,
Yeah.
Loki, season one, 92%.
Okay.
Season two, 82%.
Fuck them. Rotten
It does not make
Tomatoes
sense.
is a sheep
It
mentality.
genuinely defies logic.
They go in and they had an agenda because let's face it, the MCU's reputation still kind of on the decline, and they
Yep.
said, let's do it. Let's get this out of the way. I don't want to watch 8 episodes. What was it, 6 or 8 episodes?
I believe it was six.
Yeah, I don't want to watch 6 episodes of Tom Hiddleston running around making quips.
Hmm.
No, this was genuinely like everything I wanted out of a sequel.
Yeah. It is one of the best science fiction series that I think has been made.
It is the
It.
best time travel show they've got on there until Doctor Who arrives.
Hmm.
And the ending is fantastic.
Phenomenal. Uh, I would argue the last two episodes include some of the best, most effective CGI that Marvel has ever implemented.
Yeah,
It is damn near flawless.
the spaghetti time unraveling shit
Hmm.
that gave me like a little bit of a squirm.
Yeah, it's icky. It's very effective.
It looks like it tastes very savory, and I shouldn't have to think about what my insides taste like. And I'm not
I
gonna
do want
lie,
to point out
yeah.
the shot of Sylvie in the record shop
Hmm.
as everything is sort of exploding around her. And then the last piece is just the record spinning in midair as it slowly unravels into nothing is beautifully shot.
Agreed. I love the writing of the last 2 episodes specifically. Like,
It's so good.
there's this whole get the band back together plot, which really
Yep.
just serves to answer all of our questions before the finale of who these people were before the TVA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. And then it doesn't work.
it doesn't work.
And not only does it not work, they completely lose.
They lose bad.
I love the just the idea. I think that's the important thing about this, right? Is it starts with a great idea of Loki gets pulled out of time, out of his time because of the events of the Endgame. That's kind of its own, starting point. He gets brought into the TVA and time gets broken. And then how does he cope with that at like a very metaphysical level? And it's brilliant. It's so well thought out from the start and executed on consistently throughout.
Yes. What I love about this show is, despite everything, it doesn't have a full antagonist.
Hmm.
Like, it's got people who are kind of dicks,
Yeah.
but even then, like, the main conflict is literally just the world is unraveling.
Yeah. For me, the main antagonist in it is uh, the inevitability of knowing your own future.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Where, and there's the best moment in it for me is when uh, we learn that oh shit, I cannot remember his name. Kang,
Hmm.
at the end of time, knew that all this is going to happen. He says it outright. Loki is going through, he's mastered his, time slipping thing at this point, so he's able to sort of control the flow of time or like try again at certain events. And the moment when he turns it back on Kang and has his, and why do you think that this is the first time we've had this conversation, is brilliant. It is an excellent moment of demonstrating just how much mastery he has gotten over the fabric of the universe. Pure comic book shit, and it's the better for it.
The whole time slipping plot in general, I never saw it coming,
Yeah,
and it chef's kiss. It's the best part about this.
it's great.
Yeah,
Takes a weird little thing that starts off as like a B plot almost in the first episode and turns it into a mechanism by which they overcome the end of the world.
yeah. And the best part is MCU original. I'm like 95% sure time slipping never been a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised by that, given how much it feels like a comic book story.
Let me check.
I don't doubt it, but it really, it just feels like something that would be told in a comic book with the way that scene by scene, how it's been framed and how the narrative has been structured. It feels like something that would lend itself to a book series much more than something being shot on a screen.
And I really like how it helps make this Loki variant different than main Loki.
Yep.
Yeah.
I hope in like 10 years from now, if the MCU is still a thing, we get to see this Loki again in like some grand story where like the Avengers have to go and kill the time god Loki. And we get to like get some perspective as to just how overwhelmingly powerful they've become.
He's basically we know Odin's supposed to be like the big guy in charge, like everything.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's above Odin now.
he is.
Yeah.
He has stepped literally outside of time and positioned himself as the keeper of it. That's just so fucking cool.
One would say it was a glorious purpose.
Yep.
He was right all along.
Big Dark Soul vibes too.
Yo, that's right.
Like you can totally see like Loki thousands of years in the future having sat on the throne the entire time, just waiting, knowing that he is the only one capable of preserving time as it is. And some challenger approaches him. It's just very good.
It does set itself up for like this very fantasy epic tone.
Yep.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind if they do Avengers like King Wars or whatever it's going to be, right?
Hmm.
King Dynasty. And they have like a King variant go meet him up on there.
I can see that.
Yeah, and you have like this just aged Tom Hiddleston right there.
Hmm. And then all finishes off with the tree iconography.
Oh yeah.
Ties it all together.
The fact they use Yggdrasil
Hmm.
symbology, tying
Yep.
this all back to like Norse shit.
Yep.
Mwah.
And I'll say though, with
Yo,
that, I've now once again canceled my Disney Plus subscription.
damn, dude. I guess we're not reviewing Doctor Who when that comes out.
If it turns out to be good enough, I will, but
Fair. Fair, fair, fair.
yeah.
I think, what was it? Someone mentioned to me there's like two things that are very sad in this world. It's like dropping your birthday cake and watching an episode of Doctor Who only halfway to realize it's going to be a bad episode of Doctor Who.
Hmm. Yeah. I have high hopes for it,
Yeah,
but in the meantime, Disney can go suck an egg.
fair. Anything else for the show today?
That's all I got.
Cool. Well, I'm Mr. Ryan, and well, I've been a schmo,
And I'm Harold, and I've been a schmo.
and it's so damn humid out.